I think that North Korea is, in a sense, unobvious, only because we've never put North Korea on the top risk before. It's always been a red herring. It's always like they rattle the rockets and then everybody backs off. But I think here, and it's linked to China, so I'll put it into that. There's an unpredictable Trump and a China that doesn't want to show any weakness, and the South Korean impeachment process, and Abe's close relationship with Trump and betting on that as opposed to China. All of that kind of is moving the chess pieces in ways that are much more dangerous, as opposed to the South China Sea, where the U.S. just has weaker relations and all those countries just align themselves with Beijing. So that becomes less of a problem, in my view, in 2017. And, underlying this is the idea that, if you had talked to me at any point since we started the company and said, Ian, do you think there's any chance in the coming years of major war between key governments, I would have said no. I can't say that now. I don't think it's likely. But, you have so eroded the trust between major governments. You are so eroding the guardrails provided by multilateral institutions and architecture that the Americans have set up, that, when crises inevitably occur, the potential for them to escalate quickly and unwisely is actually much more significant. And North Korea, or maybe Taiwan, maybe Iran, Saudi Arabia, maybe Russia after the U.S. Trump-Putin rapprochement, kind of the blush fades from that rose, you could actually see the potential for military confrontation, and the impact on the global economy, of course, would be immense. So I don't say that to be an alarmist. I like to think I'm a pretty optimistic guy, but analytically, that is, I think, where we are, and that's the nature of this geopolitical recession. So that gets to the broader question of what the U.S. and China risks are all about. Maybe I start with the U.S., which is that the United States, if you are the world's only superpower, the good news is that you can, other countries cannot do as much damage to you as you can do to yourself. That's the good news. That is also the bad news. And I think that since the collapse of the Soviet Union, there have been two instances where the Americans have done profound damage and lasting damage to itself and its influence globally. The first was the extraordinary overreaction to 9/11. These endless wars that cost trillions of dollars and took hundreds of thousands of lives, and ultimately ended in failure in Iraq and Afghanistan. It made a lot of Americans wonder, why are we doing this? What is the benefit for us to say that we're going to fix these countries? And also made a lot of other countries around the world, a lot of allies of the United States, question the role that the Americans should legitimately play beyond its borders. The second was the 2016 election. And the result of that, the shock election of a complete outsider who was uniquely unfit for office, he does not want to lead an indispensable nation. He rejects the idea of an exceptionalist America. He believes that the United States should not be promoting its values around the world: democracy, rule of law, human rights. He believes the United States should not be the architect of trade agreements and free trade globally. He looks at American companies and says these companies should not be global corporations, they should be patriotic. And he looks at the media and he says the same thing. He takes a much more Chinese perspective on policy, much more transactional, and that alliances need to be win-win. They're not, sort of long structural underpinning a global system. And that perspective plays into a world where Europe is weak, the transatlantic relationship is at its weakest in decades, China is getting stronger but is challenging and creating an alternative to the United States economically, and the Russians are creating regional alternatives to the U.S. in terms of security architecture. And so clearly, for the first time since we've been writing these reports, the United States is this most significant driver of geopolitical risk as a consequence of that. And that has, dramatic and global manifestations, because for countries all over the world are going to question the durability and the utility of their relations with the United States. The Chinese see a big opportunity to move into some of that space, and you've seen that with Xi Jinping in the past months. The multilateral architecture takes a huge hit, but there's nothing else to replace it, at least not in the near term. Now, China has both the opportunity to be a leader of economic globalization. The TPP dies, so the China-led RCEP means that you can now have a gravitational pull of trade and capital and people towards Beijing as opposed to towards the United States, most importantly in Asia, but with arms reaching out into Latin America, into Europe, into sub-Saharan Africa, and the like. But there's also a danger, which is that Trump has shown very clearly that he is willing to go after China to show that he is a stronger leader. And he has said that on Taiwan, on North Korea, he said it on currency, he said it on trade. And he said it repeatedly, and the Chinese have already shown a willingness to hit back.